It was just another ordinary afternoon. Traffic, notifications, deadlines, the kind of day when everything happens. And at the same time, nothing really happens. Until I saw something simple. So simple that it would go unnoticed by anyone. A gentleman sitting on a bench in the square. His eyes were closed, a slight smile on his face. No cell phone, no hurry, no anxiety. And in that instant, a question struck me like a silent bolt of lightning. Does this man know something that the rest of us have forgotten? In a world where every second seems to fly by, there was someone standing there, not for nothing, but in peace. And that's what this video is about the forgotten wisdom that lives inside us. That silent part that doesn't seek likes or approval, but carries a truth that doesn't change with the seasons. Have you ever stopped to think why we have so many means of communication and yet feel so misunderstood? So much technology, and so little connection, so many answers on Google, and so few answers inside us. According to a study published in Science magazine, when left alone, most people would rather receive a mild electric shock than spend 15 minutes with their own thoughts. Yes, you heard right. Most people run away from internal silence as if it were a prison. But what if silence isn't the enemy? The truth is that we are asleep, awake. The body moves, but the soul remains still, watching, waiting. And sometimes all it needs is a little space, a breath, a crack of silence to start manifesting itself. This video is that space. An invitation, not to believe in something new, but to remember what you already know. Imagine waking up one day and discovering that everything you believed about the world is just a mental construct. Scary, isn't it? But maybe that's not such a distant possibility. In 1999, the movie The Matrix provoked the world with an idea that still resonates today. What if we were trapped in a programmed reality? Not by machines, but by our own beliefs, habits, and conditioning. Of course, we are not literally in a digital simulation, but we do live in an invisible structure of thought, a mental model repeated for generations and rarely questioned. From an early age, we are taught that success is about having, not being, that we need to compete, to win, to appear. And little by little, we move away from what we feel, to live what is expected of us. The illusion is to believe that we are just this body, to think that our identity can be summed up in a name, a job. It's living as if the outside world is all there is, and as if happiness is always out there, waiting to be conquered. Now here's a curious fact. In 2022, the Gallup company conducted a global survey on well-being. It found that only 33% of people feel truly fulfilled with their lives. In other words, 67% live in some degree of disconnection with what they really want. But what about the truth? Where is it? The truth doesn't shout. It whispers. It's in the pauses, in the intuition that you feel but rarely hear. That inexplicable feeling that you should be somewhere else, doing something else, living more authentically. Many spiritual masters talk about this. Eckhart Tolle, for example, explains that the human mind lives in a state of continuous distraction, jumping between the past and the future without ever really inhabiting the now. And it is in the now that truth reveals itself, not as an idea, but as a direct experience, a clarity that arises when you stop looking outwards and start looking inwards. So the next time something seems wrong in your life, maybe it's not a mistake, maybe it's a sign, a reminder that you were born to live with purpose, not to repeat patterns. Illusion is comfortable but empty. The truth is challenging but liberating. You know that voice that insists on telling you that you're not good enough? Or the one that compares, judges, criticizes, sometimes yourself, sometimes others? That's the ego, and it wears many masks. But what is the ego really? We're not talking about arrogance or vanity, as common sense would have it. On the spiritual journey, the ego represents something much deeper, the false identity we build up throughout our lives. It's the mental image we create of who we think we are. It is made up of memories, traumas, labels, achievements, and expectations. It's like a character that we believe is the protagonist of our story. The problem is that the ego doesn't want to disappear. It feeds on separation, comparison, and control. It needs to be right, it needs to win, it needs to be admired, and the more we listen to this voice, the further we move away from who we really are. Eckhart Tolle, author of the bestseller The Power of Now, explains that the ego lives in psychological time. It is always stuck in the past or anxious about the future. It doesn't know how to live in the present because the now offers nothing it can control. Overcoming the ego doesn't mean eliminating it. It is part of the human experience. It is part of the human experience. True transformation lies in recognizing it without being dominated by it. It's like looking at an actor on stage and remembering he's just part of the scene, but the show is much bigger. In practice, this requires presence, meditation, contemplation, inner silence. These are powerful tools for observing thoughts without identifying with them. Overcoming the ego is the key to inner freedom, because as long as it's in charge, your peace will depend on external factors. But when you go back to yourself, to who you are before your name, your history, your profession, you find something that the ego can never offer, peace that doesn't depend on anything. And that is the beginning of true freedom. The freedom to be without having to prove anything. Have you ever entered an environment and, without knowing why, immediately felt uncomfortable? Or conversely, have you ever met someone and felt like you'd known them for years? These experiences are no coincidence. They are the result of something that science and spirituality are increasingly beginning to recognize in common. Everything in the universe is energy, but not just energy. Energy in motion, vibration, frequency. According to quantum physics, all matter is made up of atoms that vibrate at different intensities. Even what seems solid, like a rock, is actually energy condensed into a specific state. The scientist Nikola Tesla, at the beginning of the 20th century, already said, "If you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Now, what does this have to do with you? Everything. Our thoughts, emotions, and intentions also emit frequencies. And these frequencies affect the environment around us and also attract compatible realities. It's as if we were constantly tuning into a radio station. If you're vibrating with anger, fear, or guilt, your transmission will be dense, and you'll perceive the world through that lens. On the other hand, states of gratitude, joy, and compassion raise your vibration. And this isn't just spiritual talk. A study published in 2003 by the HeartMath Institute showed that emotions such as love and appreciation generate a coherent pattern in the heartbeat, creating a more balanced and expansive electromagnetic field around the body. In other words, what you feel influences what you experience. It's not about forced positive thinking. It's about cultivating presence, intention, and awareness in everyday life. Every choice, every thought, every word, everything is vibration. You are constantly creating waves, which come back to you in the form of experiences. So the question is not whether you vibrate, but how you are vibrating. Your energy speaks before you even say a word, and the universe responds to this all the time. Life doesn't just happen from the outside, it resonates from the inside out. When you understand this, you are no longer a victim of chance, and you become the co-author of your reality. From the time we are children, we are taught to look outwards. Outside is success, outside is love, outside is the answer. But what if the greatest treasure has always been inside us? What if the real universe to be explored is not in the galaxies, but within your own being? Connecting with the inner universe is not some esoteric concept that hangs in the air. It's a reality as concrete as breathing. It's a return to our essence, to who we are behind the layers roles, and expectations. Throughout history, various masters have pointed to this same path, each in their own way. Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." The philosopher Socrates taught, "Know thyself." And the Buddha said, "Peace comes from within. Don't look for it outside." These phrases are not just beautiful, they are guiding. They invite us to silence the external noise and dive into the inner space where intuition, clarity, and true contentment live. But how do we connect with this inner universe? First of all, we need to understand that this space is not in logical thought. It begins when the mind stops. It is felt, not explained. You've already experienced it, even without realizing it. On that quiet morning when time seemed not to exist, in the contemplation of a sunset when everything stopped for an instant, or that inexplicable feeling of being exactly where you should be. In those moments, you weren't thinking about life. You were life. Practices such as meditation, contemplative silence, intuitive writing, and even attentive listening to your own body are ways of deepening this connection. It's not about looking for something new, but rediscovering what has always been there. According to neuroscience, regular meditative states increase activity in the prefrontal cortex, an area linked to empathy, self-awareness, and balanced decision-making. In other words, inner connection not only brings spiritual peace, but also improves the quality of practical life. The universe you carry within you is vast, mysterious, and profoundly wise. There is no rush there. There are no demands. There is only presence and a silent knowledge that gently guides you. Most people live as if they were lost on other people's roads without realizing that they carry within them the map of their own journey. When you align yourself with your inner universe, the external chaos loses its power, and life is no longer just a question of survival, to become an experience of profound truth and fulfillment. Now it's up to you. If this content made sense, don't stop here. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. Now, watch the next video where I show you another essential step for changing your reality.